Morning, friends, and welcome to the Thursday Huddle, which is a part two of the series I was doing. And the title is Leading with Compassion Has Research Backed Benefits. And this is a HBR paper, but this was published by physicians. And this is to a recap for those who didn't attend the first part of it, which was last week. So these are physicians from Cooper University Health Clinics or CARE, and it's also called Rowan University and exists in two sites at South New Jersey and in Delaware. And they published multiple articles on compassion and the scientific benefits of compassion on healthcare and providing healthcare. And just to recap, what I called it as the why of compassion, which is what we did in the last round. And today would be on the how of compassion. Now, this is actually a very, very interesting paper. And it's just not fuzzy, feel good factor about compassion. It's hardcore data which says if you practice compassion or demonstrate compassion at the workplace, especially in healthcare, there are huge benefits. And just as a definition, uh, compassion is empathy plus action. Empathy is the feeling you experience when you see somebody going through a suffering or a difficulty. But when you respond to that feeling and you provide an action which alleviates that suffering, you are actually demonstrating compassion. Now, the benefits of compassion are multifold. And last week, or when I spoke the last time around, I spoke about the benefits of compassion on healthcare workers, benefits of compassion on the health of individuals, and the benefits of compassion on the professional careers of individuals who practice compassion. On healthcare workers, there was less burnout. There was a positive impact on both the giver and the receiver. There were higher NPS scores, and there was an increased patient following. On the health of an individual, irrespective of the fact you're a healthcare worker or not, you lived longer, you had a lower risk for cardiovascular disease, you had maintained vitality throughout your life, productive, and you experience fewer depressive symptoms. And on professional careers, and there was a very, very interesting study where they did a longitudinal study on a class of kindergarten for 30 years. And the data which came out of that follow-up of 30 years was when you were generous and accommodative in nature, you progressed more in your career. And if you've got a pro-social motivation, that means you respond to the needs of society, you again had higher incomes. And people having an inborn trait of kindness were more successful in their professional life. So you can see the multi-pronged effect of practicing compassion. And so this is what I would say was the why of compassion. Now I'd like to go to my next part, or today's title is the how of compassion. Now, when you speak about how, it's about the practice, right? We saw the benefits. Now, how do you put it to practice? Now, we all speak about compassionate leadership, right? But compassionate leadership is learned and acquired, and it is not something which happens automatically. You know why? It's because compassion is so countercultural. Today's culture, we live in a dog eat dog world. And I use a phrase and I'll repeat it, and maybe somebody has heard it before. We live in a society which says, get what you can what you get, sit on that can as long as you can, right? In this dog eat dog world, you have to be countercultural to be compassionate. And so it's not an innate trait. You may have a seed of it, but it needs to grow. It's an uphill task to master the how of compassion. And compassionate leadership always will face obstacles to say it's easy not to show compassion. Simon Sinek, I know, says, you work enough on a person, you'll see good in him. You work long enough on a person, you will see good in him or her. And so catch people doing the right things and not catch people doing the wrong things. In administration, as you climb higher and higher, our role is to catch people doing the wrong things, right? Quality, right? This is your, this is what you do. You catch people, doing the wrong things, but you're doing it with a purpose. It's to get it right. And so, how do you do that? How do you actually catch people doing the right things? Start with small things. Appreciate people for doing the right thing in small things. And when you do that one step at a time, you achieve block by block, bit by bit. You build compassion. And then as you show compassion for small things, it will grow to show compassion in big things. And I'll quote a John Hopkins study, 40 seconds of compassion, right? In a conversation, 40 seconds of compassion can lower another person's anxiety in a measurable way. UPenn study found that spending time with serving other people increases one's subjective sense of time affluence. That means you're using it in a positive way. And when you convey to that individual that you have time for him or her, and you're not in a hurry, you're concentrating on that individual, the benefit the person receives and the benefit of the giver, both are positive. So start small, one step at a time. Now I challenge each one of you to go back to your workspace, find one person who you can demonstrate compassion to and thank him or her for what he does. And even if that person is what you would call incorrigible, beyond hope, these are words you hear in meetings. And the higher the meeting, the stronger the word. But if you convey in your small groups, you find somebody doing right things and you propagate that, or you recognize that, you will find that they will stop doing the bad things. So the first thing in the how of compassion is be thankful yourself. You're going to show compassion But compassion will not flow if you are not thankful for the surroundings you are in. If you're grateful for the situation you exist, you're more likely to show compassion, right? Because you know that you yourself don't deserve it. You heard of the phrase attitude of gratitude. It's about being thankful for whatever we receive. We live in a safe society. We have an opportunity to meet like this. We have an organization which values a meeting like this where people are conveyed a value system which we want to see practiced from Saturday to Thursday. So it's just not for the sake of meeting, it's for the sake of transformation. And whenever I meet with Dr. George, he says, we need to start bit by bit. Change happens slowly. But change which happens slowly will happen surely. If you make radical changes, you may just disrupt the system and completely collapses. Being thankful for the situation you're in, the work you do, the family you belong to, the home you have, the society you live in, will make a difference in the workplace. That's why we say when people have a problem at the workplace, it often traces back to something else happening elsewhere in their life, which is not evident. But that is the reason why they're having their problem. So when you catch them doing the right things or spend time enough with them, you will find out that there's a cause for it, and you address that cause, you will set things right. I like this quote. The purpose of life is not to be happy, but to matter, to be productive, to be useful, to have it make some difference that you lived at all. The purpose of life is not to be happy, but to matter. And I firmly believe that AMH exists to make a difference, to matter. We go through difficult times, but those difficult times just make us refine us for the better. The second thing after being thankful is find a common ground when you want to show compassion. Find a common ground where you can demonstrate compassion to the individual. So what I mean is, it's easy to like the like-minded people. But when you have a person who comes from a completely different surrounding, find common ground. That commonality will help us build bridges. There are two things which can happen in life. One is build bridges, the other is burn bridges. Burn bridges are one for all destroyed and you never be able to build again. And it's easy to burn bridges than to build bridges. Build bridges usually take a lifetime. Burning bridges happen often overnight. So it's your choice and my choice to decide to build bridges or burn bridges. And so finding a common ground with an individual who comes from a completely different surrounding will help you start building bridges. And that will make a difference to the place you live in. Celebrate compassion. Celebrate compassion in the organization you live in, you work in. And as I was preparing for this, and I was asking Sam, we need to celebrate compassion on how we have done it within AMH. And I've got a story to share at the end of it of celebrating compassion. When an employee goes above and beyond to help someone else, let people know that. Celebrating compassion does not come naturally. I was looking at our form for appraisal annually. There are letters of appreciation which come for an individual. There are letters which come as complaints. It's to highlight and celebrate those letters of appreciation, build on that, and use that to work out the next set of goals and address the needs of that individual as he progresses. And by the way, everyone aspires to progress. Everyone aspires to go to a higher level. And so, as a leader, make sure you and I are able to help people aspire their higher goals. In fact, in leadership, it's to identify goals which that individual themselves does not see. That is leadership, of taking them to that level, way beyond what they even think about. It's not in their paradigm, but you expand their boundaries. You may be intrigued by the word elevate. Elevation is a state of emotional uplift that we feel when we bear witness to another person's compassion, moral excellence, or heroism. And elevation motivates us to be more compassionate and altruistic ourselves. So when you see compassion on display and you celebrate that, you yourself will elevate. So the benefits of celebrating another person's compassion has great benefit on you as an individual. But it cuts both ways. It only takes one toxic, it's all about me personality in the room to drag everyone else down. So research confirms that both compassion and rudeness are contagious. You can choose to be contagious with rudeness, or you can choose to be contagious with compassion. You cannot do both. Now you look at your workspace and see what is displayed at your workspace. Is it compassion or rudeness? It's either or, not both and. Compassion is a superpower. And I thought it was too, it sounded too good to be true. I thought it was sounding, unrealistic, surreal. But actually, it's true that if you display compassion, your chance of climbing up that so-called corporate ladder is way higher than anybody else who has only competence. Competence will get you thus far. Competence plus compassion will get you much, much further. It's a superpower. It's a drug which can stimulate you, boost you. And when leadership is looking to prune down, it's easy to replace competent people with another set of competent people at much lower salaries. But when you have competence, with other skill sets, and one big is about compassionate leadership. If you do that, you will not lose your job. And that's for guarantee. It will stand the test of time. So for better talent retention, organizational performance, especially in challenging times, difficult times, when the headwinds are strong, managers should recognize that compassion is not merely a nice to have. It's evidence-based skill that is integral to leading effectively and holding teams together. And when we face the headwinds, what can keep people together is compassion, not rudeness, not ruthlessness. Because when you become ruthless, you can display rudeness. So I'll come to our own story. And the story is, where did we display compassion? And I know that none of you may be knowing this because this doesn't exist within the hospital framework. It's a community outreach. So NAS, this big construction company with over 3,000, 7,000, 7,000 staff, 3,000 at the bottom of the pyramid, people who are basically construction workers, most of them living in very difficult circumstances, right? You can be ruthless there and nobody will know. They noted that they had higher suicides among their people. And so I think this started in the month of September. That was the month of suicide prevention. As a outreach, they came to us and said, can you do a wellness program, an emotional, a psychological wellness program to help our staff navigate difficult times? So this well-being program started last year for a 1-year contract. The input we had was much more. The possible rewards we reap from it in terms of monetary benefit was not too much, but it was still worth that effort. So the leadership arranged, or, we did a signing of a contract, and you can see Julia here with the leaders of NAS and some of our staff who were part of it in terms of starting this program. And we really didn't know where they were going. But what happened was amazing. They did that almost every Thursday. They have a session which goes to these camps in various sites, including the one where the extension to Avenues Mall is happening. Sit with around 300 to 400 workers, listen to them, and also build capacity among their own middle managers and what they were called as captains, right? Care captains. So there were people who actually took this, what I said, it's countercultural, it's not natural, it's not innate. You have to train yourself to be compassionate and to identify people who are in trouble. And so the success story has been, many a life has been saved. You can't put a number. They have been saved from suicide. Many of them have reached out to their care captain because they saw a different manager, reached out to him, and they have worked together to improve the morale and the psychological well-being of those staff at the bottom of the pyramid. Not seen too much to the outside, but definitely making a difference to people's lives. May not be in the front page of a newspaper, but it's making a difference in the lives of people who otherwise would be overlooked. The world is divided into two: the who's who and the who's he, right? We all choose to be the who's who. But when you work for the who's he, you'll actually become a who's who. You'll make a difference to the society and by demonstrating compassion consciously. So this is the team which made it happen from our side. You can see them around. But every Thursday afternoon, they have a session outside of this hospital in various camps, which make a difference. And we are demonstrating compassion as an example of how of compassion by AMH to the community we serve. Thank you and have a good weekend. Dr. Jadhav. And I'll close this meeting. Thank you.